There is another form of protest happening this holiday as well.
Yeah, people are voicing their opposition to the Supreme Court's decision by displaying their American flags upside down. 10 TV's Bryant Somerville explains why.
From the streets of the U.S. Capitol to the steps of the Ohio State House, opposition to the overturning of Roe v. Wade has shown different faces, signs, and chants across the country. Those in favor of the decision felt it was a 50-year wrong that was finally made right. For the other side,
it felt like
Melissa Gallagher.
It felt like the country that we know and love was taking away our rights and just pulling the rug right out from underneath us.
Across the country, fueled by social media, a call for those who disagree with the Supreme Court to raise their American flags upside down. According to the U.S. Flag Code, flying the American flag inverted is legal as a signal of dire distress in instances of extreme danger to life or property.
Now, let that happen at his own home in one of the most fraught times in American history since the Civil War is just sad. And it shows how little respect he has for the institution. It shows how little respect he has for the law. It really does. It's disgusting. It's just disgusting.
Willie.
And by the way, we can't overstate the timing of this, which is January 17th, 2021. Think about where we were as a country, still completely shaken by what had happened on January 6th. And a sitting Supreme Court justice has a flag flying upside down at his home that is a symbol of solidarity, as John said, with the Stop the Steal movement. We should explain a little bit.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this absolutely ridiculous and what I find to be comical fake outrage episode from the mainstream liberal media where they are upset about a conservative Supreme Court judge, Mr. Samuel Alito, flying an American flag upside down after January 6th. Now, there are multiple reasons why this story is ridiculous, but I want you guys to understand where the fake outrage is coming from and why the mainstream liberal media is running with these desperate stories. Well, it's because they're trying to discredit the conservative Supreme Court, okay? The Supreme Court has not ruled in favor of Democrats and the left, and these people are essentially trying to get rid of conservative Supreme Court justices by basically trying to argue that they have conflicts of interest. This is why they have spent so much time attacking Clarence Thomas, even though he's a black man. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we've been told by the left, no, you can't attack a black person on the Supreme Court, okay? If you attack somebody like a Ketanji Brown Jackson the same way that they're attacking Clarence Thomas, they say that you're racist, right? And that you're a bigot, okay? You hate black women, okay? But apparently the liberal media can openly attack a black Supreme Court judge if he is a conservative. It is open season on black conservatives. But with that being said, again, what they're trying to do now is that they're trying to attack Samuel Alito by basically arguing that him flying an upside down American flag outside of his house, which traditionally is a symbol of distress, okay, or some type of threat to somebody or, property or whatever, right, in the country, right, is a symbol of basically, again, distress in the country. They're trying to say that, well, this is evidence and proof that Samuel Alito supported Stop the Steal, okay? And apparently, if you fly an American flag upside down, that is a Stop the Steal symbol, even though the left was flying the American flag upside down when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and nobody was claiming that it was a symbol for Stop the Steal, right? Everybody kind of understood why they were doing it, even though I think it was kind of ridiculous for them to do it in that situation. But again, nobody was boo-hoo-whining and crying about it. Now all of a sudden they're boo-hoo-whining and crying about a conservative judge flying the American flag upside down after January 6th. So let's actually react to some of the nonsense here from the mainstream liberal media.
We have new reporting in the New York Times that I find absolutely staggering. That for days in and around January 17th, 2021, Neighbors told the New York Times that Justice Samuel Alito, one of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court, had an American flag hanging upside down outside of his house. That inverted flag was being used as a symbol of the Stop the Steal movement. This is a justice who is very engaged, continues to be, in and around issues concerning Trump's role in the January 6th insurrection. Apparently had a Stop the Steal flag flying outside of his house. He says in a denial, I had no involvement whatsoever in the flying of the flag. It was briefly placed by Mrs. Alito, Martha Ann Alito, in response to a neighbor's use of objectionable and personally insulting language on our yard signs. This is nothing but a neighborhood snafu, a little battle between neighbors. Rachel, do you have thoughts on that news coming against the backdrop of today?
Yeah, so I want you guys to understand the ridiculous framing here from MSNBC, okay? This is like blatant dishonesty right in front of your face. They're really stretching, okay? This is what I call an ass pull, okay? Because that's exactly what it is. They're trying to say that the American flag being flown upside down after January 6th is a symbol for Stop the Steal. And the way that they came to that conclusion is that, well, there was some American flags being flown upside down after the election as a symbol of discontent with the outcome of the election. And they're automatically saying that, well, that is a reason for why Samuel Alito was doing it, even though they don't have any evidence or proof of that being the case. Because I could argue that wouldn't January 6th in and of itself, the fact that you people frame it as an insurrection, even though it wasn't really an insurrection, but you people framing January 6th as an insurrection. And after January 6th, a lot of people, the way that they reacted to January 6th, people were dissatisfied to see what happened, okay? They didn't like some of the violence that we saw that happened that day. Couldn't you also reasonably conclude that flying the American flag upside down could be a symbol of discontent with what happened on January 6th? Right? I'm just saying, like, I actually think that it's probably most likely that the flag was flown upside down as symbolism for being against what happened that day, not for what happened that day, right? That actually, to me, logically makes more sense than to fly it upside down as a show of support for what happened on January 6th. That, to me, doesn't really make sense. What actually really makes sense if you was to fly it upside down because you didn't like what you saw that day in regards to some of the violence that happened. But they're not giving Samuel Alito the benefit of the doubt. They have essentially extrapolated a conclusion that, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense. They're only saying it because he's a conservative judge, and they are desperate. They are absolutely desperate to try to have one of these Supreme Court justices, the conservative Supreme Court justices, removed, right? They want to overthrow the Supreme Court. This is what they want to do. And stories like this are a great example of the mental gymnastics, the desperation that the mainstream liberal media will go through in order to try to discredit and to smear these Supreme Court justices. Because I want you guys to understand, the photograph of the upside down flag was not on January 6th, okay? They not before January 6th, okay? It was on January 17th. So we're talking about weeks after what happened with January 6th, that flag was photographed, and they're trying to automatically connect that back to January 6th, even though they don't have any real reason to conclude that the flying of the flag upside down is connected to January 6th outside of Samuel Alito being a conservative judge, right? That's all they have. And for them to conclude that not only is it connected to January 6th, but it's being flown in support of what happened that day is even more ridiculous. And again, this is why people don't respect journalists anymore. This is why people like Rachel Maddow, this woman, Lawrence O'Donnell, this is why people don't respect this profession anymore, because this is not journalism. This is straight up opinion commentary. This is straight up propaganda, okay? That's what's happening here. That's what's happening. This is a partisan attack being levied against the Supreme Court by the liberal media using acts of desperation, right? Stories that are not real stories, but they have come to conclusions that are not there from the facts that we have to undermine the Supreme Court as an institution, which, again, if anybody else did this, if Fox News engaged in this type of partisan hackery at this level, again, they say that's dangerous, right? It is dangerous to try to undermine an institution with these types of ridiculous stories, right? But MSNBC, they traffic in this type of nonsense on a daily basis. It blows my mind.
I mean, it's unsettling. It's gross. I mean, first of all, everybody has different marriage rules, but it's my wife's fault is probably never within the marriage rules when you are talking to the New York Times about something that you've done that has brought enough scandal upon you and the institution you represent that it's on the front page of the New York Times. It was my wife. Like, I just don't, even if it was, like, just, I don't know. I don't want to give you any advice. But I feel like, you know, the upside down flag, it wasn't like he had a Trump 2024, Trump 2028 flag up there. It was the American flag upside down, which is a traditional symbol of distress. Unless Mrs. Alito, I guess, was signaling her distress and calling for help, the explanation makes no sense.
Well, again, if this is the logic that you're going to use, okay, that some type of personal feelings about, you know, her being in distress or the country being in distress is not reasons to fly the American flag upside down. If you feel that way, then you should probably come out and say that it was wrong for the Roe v. Wade rioters to fly the American flag upside down as well, too. But again, they'll never say that. Again, when the Roe v. Wade rioters were flying the American flag upside down, all of a sudden it wasn't a symbol for stop the steal, right? But if a conservative judge does it, it's a symbol for stop the steal. Again, it's amazing how that works. So I can definitely understand why somebody or the wife of a Supreme Court judge would fly the American flag upside down as a symbol of distress in regards to the current state of the country and the divide and the chaos that was happening in the country at the time, right? That actually would make sense. I don't think that her explanation is unreasonable, but, you know, hey, for whatever reason, MSNBC doesn't see the logic there, right? But they see the logic in trying to connect the flag back to January 6th, even though it was photographed on January 17th. It really blows my mind. I really don't get it.
That was something that people were doing around that time to indicate that the country was effectively under siege in some way, which is what Trump supporters were making the case for when they were.
Well, I mean, you guys were making the case for it as well, too. You were saying that the country is under siege from Trump supporters because of what happened that day. So again, the flag could have been flown in support of either one, right? We really don't know. In fact, we don't even know if it's connected to that at all. But again, you've already come to that conclusion based off nothing but a picture, right? A picture of a flag taken upside down in this man's yard on January 17th. This is what they call journalism, guys. In 2024, this is journalism. This is embarrassing. It really is.
We're describing the election as having been stolen when it wasn't. I mean, Justice Alito has become increasingly unembarrassed about displaying himself as a partisan, as a consumer of partisan narratives and media, and in ruling in ways that is just kind of out loud, all caps, disdainful toward a majority of the country in some cases, or certainly against people who disagree with him. And this fits with that, but it's also something that I've never heard anything like this in the entire history of every controversy I've ever known about with the United States Supreme Court. I think Chief Justice Roberts has a problem on his hands in terms of the behavior of some of the more aggressive justices and those who are really flouting ethics concerns and equanimity concerns with their behavior.
This is insane. This is insane. The lack of awareness is astonishing, right? While you're complaining about the Supreme Court or a Supreme Court justice engaging in partisan hackery, you are engaging in partisan hackery by even accusing the judge of engaging in partisan hackery based off a story that is nothing more than a picture of a flag upside down in which you've come to a conclusion that you can only come to via partisan hackery, right? That's the irony here. And again, they don't really see how silly this is, right? This is like the pot calling the kettle black, except I don't think that Samuel Alito, there's no evidence that Samuel Alito is engaging in any type of partisan hackery based off of just this photo. This is something that you guys are making up. This is what you want to believe as a desperate attempt to discredit and to undermine the Supreme Court. And again, if anybody else did this level of hack journalism, right, and story reporting, if the right-wing media did this, you guys would be saying that this is dangerous. It is dangerous to try to undermine an institution using this type of speculation, right? That, again, you only can come to this conclusion, again, if you are, like, trying to just straight up undermine the Supreme Court, right? They're just using anything that they can at this point to try to discredit the institution because they're not ruling in a way that these people agree with, right? And that's essentially what is happening here, right? There's an attack on the Supreme Court from the liberal media and the Democrats, and that to me is dangerous, right? These people want to talk about what's a threat to democracy. What these people are doing is actually a threat to democracy, right? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.